Welcome to Catholic Ed for All, your weekly insight into topics of special education in Catholic schools. My name is Dr. Raul Escarpio, and I invite you to join me each week as we learn how to be more inclusive in Catholic schools and continue to live out St. John Paul II's message of open wide the doors to Christ. Many thanks go out to RCL Benzinger, who is generously sponsoring this podcast. RCL Benzinger enriches the worldwide Catholic community by providing the most engaging and highest quality resources, programs, and services rooted in the rich and diverse tradition of the Catholic faith. And now, on to our show. On the show today, I am joined by Doreen Engel, adjunct faculty member and professional development consultant for the Greeley Center for Catholic Education in Chicago, Illinois. She is also the author of Be Open, a guide to prayerful reflection on inclusion in Catholic schools, and she's also an associate for the Sisters of Mercy. Why, hello, Doreen. Welcome to the show, and thanks for being here.
Hello, Raul. Always a real pleasure.
Thank you, Doreen. Can you please tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Although I work for the wonderful Greeley Center and with the amazing folks there in Illinois, I actually live in Rhode Island. I live with my father, who's 100 years old.
Wow.
Those who follow me on Twitter know that occasionally I will mention something that I've learned from his amazing life. And that's it. That's my life.
That's a pretty busy life, right?
It is. It's a privilege.
Well,
it's a privilege.
Speaking of privileges, please tell me what it means to be an associate of the Sisters of Mercy.
Well, it's another privilege. Many religious orders, our listeners may know, have associates, and these are lay people that they feel are in tune with the charism of the order and doing work that is directly related to the charism of the order. And so they provide a year of formation and prayer. And then if you know, the sisters and yourself feel it's appropriate, then you become an associate. And it's just wonderful experience. It has it's been a real blessing in my life. And the listeners may know that the sisters are very active all over the world, of course, but particularly here in Rhode Island. The Mercy Sisters are well known throughout the state, so it's been a real joy.
I don't know if it's the same order, but I grew up in my Catholic schools with the Sisters of Mercy at Immaculate Conception.
I bet it is.
And they came from Ireland. They opened the schools in the
yes,
in the late 50s, I want to say 56, something like that. And no, I didn't go to school back then. But when I got there in the early 70s, they were my first my first taste of Catholic education. And I remember this wonderful fifth grade sister who I had, and what I remember was her bright smile, and she would race us to the end of the fence. She would race all her students to the end of the fence and beat us back. She would play kickball with us. And wow, I mean, those Catholic schools who don't have that special tie-in to a religious order don't know what they're missing, for real. I mean, it's just incredible to be able to grow up with a religious right next to you. Right, Doreen?
I agree, and I even I guess I'm still growing. I'm not growing up, maybe out, but I still value so much having regular contact with religious sisters. I just can't tell you, and it must be the same order because, of course, the wonderful Catherine Macaulay began the Sisters of Mercy in Dublin with her concern for children and for young mothers who needed an education.
Fantastic. So my last question on that is it like other orders that have steps or levels, like the Scout Sisters, or is it just an associate after a year of formation?
Just an associate.
Okay, easy enough.
That's it. Yeah.
So moving on to this wonderful professional development that you help Mike Boyle and the folks of Greeley Center. Can you tell me about your work there?
Well, I hope our listeners know the amazing work of the Greeley Center and Dr. Mike Boyle and my other colleagues there. If you don't, run to the computer and look it up.
Right now,
uh,
we can wait.
right now, right? Well, wait, put us on pause. But there's so many things that Greeley is doing, but what I'm specifically doing is I teach 2 of the courses in the Links program, which is a year-long 4-course certificate program on leading inclusive Catholic schools, hence the name Links. And I teach the course on special education in Catholic schools and also exceptional child, which I also taught at Providence College this summer in person, and it was really fun to be teaching the same course online and in person. As a learner and as a teacher, I enjoyed that very much. And then I'll be teaching also in the principal certification program. So it's wonderful. They're online courses. I get to meet folks from all over the country. At the moment, we're tri-coastal. We have students on the East Coast, in Seattle, and in New Orleans.
Wow.
So it's exciting because you hear about what's going on in different parts of the country. Some dioceses, archdioceses have a laser-like focus, maybe let's say on dyslexia. So you get to learn about that, see what they're doing and what they've accomplished, and then maybe somebody else, has thrown open their doors for children with intellectual disabilities, and you get to hear all about that. So I love it. I'm learning right along with my students.
Fantastic. So on that accord, you're an associate of the Sisters of Mercy. You're an adjunct faculty member. You do this with the Greeley Center all the time, but yet you're an author as well. You've published a book through NCA, the National Catholic Educational Association, called "Be Open: A Guide to Prayerful Reflection on Inclusion in Catholic Schools." Can you tell me about this wonderful book that you've written, please?
I can. And of course, many thanks to NCA for publishing this for me. Be Open is quite different from some of the other books that NCA and also, other publishers. Loyola Press is publishing some things. Benziger is publishing some things. And they're wonderful. They're wonderful. Crystal Brooks, Colleen McCoy-Sageka, got to give a shout out John Barone, Charlene Catra. They are talking about methods that work in Catholic schools. And of course, Mike Boyle and everybody at Greeley has published. And that's not what this book is. This book, the book that I wrote, I thought what I wanted to do, Raul, really was reach out to teachers that I know are terrified. They're thinking, I can't do this. I can't do this. I just can't for whatever reason. Either I don't feel spiritually ready to do it, it's not impractical. And I wanted to share with them 10 different episodes in my own life where I was clueless, just clueless as a teacher, trying to work with a child with a disability. And so there's 10 chapters, and they're all structured the same way. First, there's a gospel passage, and this was the passage that actually was in my heart and in my mind when I was trying to get through whatever the situation was. Then there's a reflection, and it describes my interaction with real children, real parents, real teachers. Obviously, they're usually disguised, names are changed, but I've had such a long career and I've taught in so many dioceses. And then with the consulting, really I've been all over the country. So it's very easy to, nobody will know who the child actually was. But they're all true stories that happened to me, and speaking through mostly the children and sometimes their parents and my colleagues helped me to get a new insight into what it meant to be inclusive and what it meant to work with children with disabilities. And then after that, there's a prayer service. And then the fourth part of each chapter are guided reflection questions. My hope, and the way the book is laid out, is that a faculty could do this together. They could start in September, read the reflection, keep that particular gospel passage in their heart, then come together, have the prayer service, and then sit down and talk about the questions. And I tried to make them very open, and I was very candid about about how clueless I was. No, the bad choices that I made. So this is not a book that. So when I look it over, sometimes I still have to shake my head and say, "Wow, Doreen." But God is good. That was my point.
Yes.
That was my point. And I thought maybe I do know some things now. Now I know some things. I'm supposed to know some things to be helpful, but I didn't always know them, And I still, I won't tell which one, but one of the stories in the book is very, very, very recent. And I'm not particularly pleased with myself, but God was good, and my student was wonderful and got me into shape, So I was so pleased that NCA wanted to publish this, and there's many good secular products. If you want to learn about dyslexia, if you want to learn about organizational skills, if you can use those. I thought what was needed was really faculty to come together and reflect, what are we called to do here at this school in this time by our faith and by God. Not what anybody else is doing. What are we doing? And I'm happy to say that I know that some schools are going through this through the course of the year, month by month, and I've been enjoying on Twitter, or some people have been emailing me directly as they get to the next chapter, and it's really been very touching.
Fantastic. I'm so happy to hear that. So I know you won't share names or whatever, but you'll share some favorite parts of the book with me. Pick one and just tell me a favorite part that when you wrote it, you're like, yeah, I like that. I like that. Tell me one of your favorite parts from the book.
Well, really, it was hard to pick, because I loved my students so much. But I would have to say that I was asked to speak at a school once that was starting to welcome children with intellectual disabilities, and some of the parents had concerns. And in the moment, this just came to me, in the moment, I said, if you start this work and one of the children here becomes ill, you'll be prepared to have them remain at the school. There's other things about this work that don't occur to you immediately. It just came to me. And don't you know that there was a child who developed cancer.
Wow.
And didn't recover. And I got the phone call from the principal saying, we want her to come back to school here until she dies.
Wow.
Yes, that was it was one of the most sacred and one of the most terrifying moments in my life. I wept. I had a lot of contact by phone with the parents. But I felt I knew them, and I thought I have no idea how to do it. I can't do this. No idea how to do this. But it got done. It wasn't me. It wasn't me that got it. I just kept putting one foot in front of another, and let's say it was God that got it done. And she went to school there until 8 days before she died. And she became a Catholic.
It's amazing how even in a tragedy like that, how the Lord can use us as being His instruments. If we're just, no pun intended, if we're just open, if we just be open to all the possibilities that He can give us.
Well, that was why I spent weeks on what would the good title be. The passage where He opens the ears of the man who's deaf. Which is actually a very challenging gospel passage for people who are deaf. I write about that in the book, too, in another chapter. And it's actually translated in most scripture as be opened, ED at the end. And I left that off. I thought, well, I'll just say be open because that conveys more of openness in general. Yeah, I keep her, that young woman who also perhaps could be a young man. I was, I changed things. I explained that in the beginning of the book because everybody deserves their privacy. But that child's math card I still keep in my wallet, and that was something.
It was a blessing in a way, if we can say that. It was a blessing. So Doreen, our time is running out. You and I can always go on forever talking with each other,
Yes.
and I love that about us. Doreen, what should Catholic special education look like?
Well, two things. It should be an outgrowth of our faith. It has to be. It won't work just borrowing things from other systems, as good as they may be. I just don't see that as the beginning point. It comes from our faith. And then the second thing I would say is we need to be open to talk about it. We need to update. Again, I'm privileged. I'm hearing from people all over the country. People sometimes get in touch with me to ask my thoughts. And what was exciting when I was finishing grad school in 1983, it's old news. It's old news. I would say to people continually, I would not go to a doctor that had not updated her work since 1983. I wouldn't go to that doctor.
It's true.
And neither would you probably.
Right.
No. So as proud as we may be of what we have done and what we have accomplished and how well it worked, that's all great. But we have to keep putting one foot in front of another and look at new methods and new ways that in some case, frankly, are better. They are better. And the research tells us that. It's not just my personal opinion. They're well researched. So that's what I would hope would happen in Catholic special education.
Fantastic. Elegant and eloquent as always. Doreen, thank you so much for joining me today. I wish you nothing but prayers and blessings as you continue your mission to make schools more inclusive in Catholic schools. And as an author, I hope there's a part two coming out one of these days or months or years. And I just wish you nothing but blessings, my friend. Thank you so much, and it's always so good to talk to you.
Well, thank you, Raul, and thank you for your ministry with this podcast. I'm very grateful.
Thank you so much. God bless you. Well, that's it for this week. If this podcast was a blessing to you, can you please head over to iTunes and subscribe and give us a review or a rating? It really does help other Catholic educators find the podcast and use it as a resource. Thanks again to the amazing people at RCL Benziger for generously sponsoring this podcast. Check out their new resource for Catholic schools, Blessed Are We, Faith in Action, which enables teachers to share the love of Christ with children who have special needs. Visit rclbenziger.com to learn more. Join me again next time as we continue to advance God's kingdom by including all of God's children in Catholic schools and faith formation. Until then, this is Dr. Raul Escarpio. Thanks for listening, and may God bless your day.